Alex had always liked his quiet life on the small colony planet. It was a place where he could relax and enjoy his work as a mechanic, fixing up ships and gadgets for the people who lived in the area. Life was simple, and there was little danger. The people around him were friendly, and he could always count on a warm smile or a friendly hello as he walked down the dusty streets. But that all changed the moment the door to his small home burst open. A woman, not just a woman, but a strange alien stood in the doorway, breathing heavily as though she'd been running for her life. Her wide, scared eyes looked around the room, searching for something, anything that might keep her safe. She was tall and thin, with smooth blue skin that shimmered under the soft lights of Alex's home. Her hair, a silver-white color, hung around her face in long strands. Despite the clear signs of fear on her face, there was something oddly graceful about the way she moved. Alex stared, unsure of what to do. He hadn't seen many aliens in his lifetime, especially not this close. The colony was far from the usual space trade routes, and visitors from other planets were rare. But this was something different. This alien wasn't here for a trade or a diplomatic meeting. No, this woman was running from something. Please. I need your help, the alien woman gasped, her voice shaking. I can't hide here for long. He's coming. Alex stood frozen. The word he seemed to carry a heavy weight. He couldn't understand what was going on, but the urgency in her voice told him that whatever it wasn't good. Who's coming? Alex finally managed to ask, his voice sounding strange in his own ears. The alien woman stepped further into the room, her eyes darting nervously toward the window, as if expecting someone to burst through it at any second. She said, her voice barely above a whisper, "He's a warlord. He's dangerous." Alex blinked in confusion. "A warlord?" he asked, trying to wrap his mind around what she was saying. "I'm not sure what you're asking me. I'm just a mechanic. I don't know anything about warlords. Or battleships." Her eyes softened, and she took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Please," she said again, this time with a kind of desperation that Alex couldn't ignore. "I'm not asking for war. I just need to hide. I just need somewhere safe. I won't cause any trouble. Please help me." Her plea pulled at Alex's heart. He wasn't a fighter, and he didn't want to get caught in some warlord's fight. But looking into her eyes, he saw something that made him pause. She wasn't just some random alien. There was something in her expression, a mix of fear and sadness that made him believe her. He glanced out the window nervously. The sun was setting, painting the sky with bright oranges and purples. It was the perfect time for an attack. His eyes shifted back to the woman standing in front of him. Her clothes were torn, her skin streaked with dirt, and she had the look of someone who had been running for a long time. "Okay," Alex said after a long moment, his voice shaky. "You can stay here for now, but you'll have to explain more. Is this husband of yours? And why are you running?" Alex took a step back, the weight of her words hitting him hard. The idea of a warlord, someone with such power, chasing after this alien woman was overwhelming. He didn't know much about warlords or space battles, but he knew one thing for sure. Zarya was in danger, and if she was right about her husband, she might not be safe for long. "How do you know he's coming here?" Alex asked, his voice tense. Zarya's face twisted with fear. "He has trackers. I know he's close. If I don't hide now, he will find me, and then it will be over." Alex felt his pulse quicken. The thought of a warlord showing up on his doorstep was more than he could handle. He wasn't a soldier, and he didn't have any way of defending himself. But Zarya was pleading for help, and he couldn't turn her away. "Stay here," Alex said, his voice firm. "I'll figure something out, but you need to stay hidden. Don't let anyone see you." Zarya nodded quickly, fear still in her eyes. Thank you so much. You don't know what this means." As she sat down to rest, Alex moved to the window, peering outside. He didn't know what was coming, but he knew. He had to make a decision. He had to protect her or risk everything. The sky darkened as the first stars began to appear, and Alex could hear the faint hum of engines in the distance. The warlord's forces were closer than he thought. The quiet life Alex had once known was about to change forever. And it would all start with the decision he made tonight. Alex paced back and forth across his small living room, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had never been involved in anything like this before. His days had been filled with routine tasks, repairing ships, fixing engines, and ensuring that the systems in the colony kept running smoothly. But now, an alien woman with blue skin and a terrifying past had shown up at his doorstep, and a warlord's army was on its way. Zarya was sitting quietly in the corner, her eyes downcast, but there was a nervous energy in her posture. She had been running for days, maybe weeks, and the fear that had once been in her eyes now seemed to linger like a shadow, clouding her every thought. Alex could see the exhaustion in her face, the way her body trembled slightly whenever a noise came from outside. She had told him everything she could about her past with Carrick, the warlord who had married her against her will. She explained how she had tried to escape before, but each time, Carrick's men would find her, drag her back, and punish her. She had seen enough to know that there was no hope of freedom while he was still in power. "We have to leave," Zarya said suddenly, lifting her head. Her voice was filled with urgency. "It's only a matter of time before they find us here. You have to understand. Carrick has ways of tracking me. He'll never stop." Alex stopped pacing and looked at her. The desperation in her voice struck him. He had never been in a situation like this, and part of him wanted to tell her to leave, to go somewhere else, and let him go back to his peaceful life. But looking at Zarya, he couldn't bring himself to do it. She had trusted him, and now he was her only chance. "We can't just run," Alex replied, his voice tense. "We don't even know where to go. And if they're looking for you, they'll find us." Zarya stood up slowly, her face full of worry. "I know, but we can't stay here, not when they're so close. I can't let him get me again. If he does, it will be the end of everything for me." Alex hesitated. He wasn't a soldier, had no training in fighting or escaping from a warlord's army. He was just a mechanic, someone who worked with his hands and kept to himself. But he had already made the choice to help her, and now he had to figure out how to protect her. "We need to think this through," Alex said, his mind racing. "I don't know how we can outrun them, but we need a plan. I can't just hide you here forever. There's got to be something else we can do." Zarya bit her lip, clearly struggling with the same fears. "There is a safe house," she said quietly. "An old hideout my people used to use. It's deep underground, far from here. I thought if I could get to it, I'd be safe. But now, I don't know if I can make it on foot, not with the warlord ships looking for me." Alex's mind began to work, focusing on the possibility of escape. The colony wasn't far from the edge of a dense forest, and there were rumors of tunnels hidden beneath the land, remnants of an ancient civilization that had once inhabited the area. He had heard stories about them from old-timers in the colony, but he didn't know much. Still, it seemed like a chance. "I've heard of those tunnels," Alex said, his voice more determined now. "I think I can find them. If we can get to them, it might be our best shot at escaping the warlord's forces." Zarya's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of hope sparking in them for the first time since she had arrived. "You can do that?" Alex nodded. "I'm not an expert on the tunnels, but I've worked on the systems beneath the colony before. I know where some of them are. If we can get to the entrance, we might have a chance to hide from them." Zarya let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "Thank you. You don't know how much this means to me. I don't have much time," Alex said. "We'll need to move fast. The warlord's forces could be close." He grabbed a few essentials, some food, a couple of tools, and started heading for the back door. "Stay close to me," he said, trying to stay calm. "Get you to safety. Just follow my lead." Zarya nodded quickly, her face pale but determined. She had no other choice. Her freedom was at stake. Now she was relying on a human mechanic who barely knew how to fight. They moved swiftly, slipping out of Alex's home and into the streets. The sun was setting, casting a dim orange light over the colony. The streets were quieter than usual, and the shadows seemed to stretch longer than they should. Alex kept his eyes on the horizon, his senses alert for any sign of danger. Zarya walked beside him, her steps light but hurried, as they reached the edge of the colony. Alex spotted a small trail leading into the dense forest. The path was barely visible, hidden beneath overgrown plants, but it was there. The entrance to the tunnels was close. Suddenly, Alex heard the unmistakable sound of engines in the distance. Warlord's ships were coming closer. "We don't have much time," Alex said, pulling Zarya along with him. "Hurry." Zarya followed without question, her heart pounding in her chest. She could feel the weight of the moment, the fear of being caught, the fear of losing her only chance at freedom. She had no idea what would happen next. But for the first time in weeks, she allowed herself to hope. They reached the edge of the forest, and Alex motioned for Zarya to crouch low behind a thick bush. "We'll wait for the ships to pass," he whispered. "Then we'll head for the tunnels." Zarya nodded, holding her breath. Every sound, every movement in the wind seemed amplified as they waited. She could only pray that they wouldn't be discovered. But as the sound of the engines grew louder, she realized that hope was the only thing she could hold on to now. The sound of the engines faded into the distance, but Alex and Zarya didn't move right away. They remained crouched behind the thick underbrush, their bodies pressed to the ground. Alex's eyes were fixed on the horizon, watching for any signs of movement. His heart raced as the tension in the air grew thicker. Every passing second felt like an eternity. Zarya's breath was shallow, her hands trembling as she clutched the edge of the bushes. She had been running for so long, and now, with the warlord's forces so close, it felt like freedom was slipping through her fingers. Once more, she wanted to run, to escape, but the fear of being caught held her in place. Her mind raced with thoughts of what would happen if they were discovered. "Are they gone?" Zarya whispered, her voice barely audible, though her tone was filled with urgency. Alex took a deep breath, listening intently. The engines were now completely out of earshot, and the colony had returned to its quiet, peaceful stillness. He glanced over his shoulder, his eyes scanning the path behind them. The forest stretched out before them, its dark trees like silent sentinels watching their every move. He had no other choice. If they didn't get to the tunnels soon, everything they had worked for would be in vain. Together, they stood up cautiously, making sure no one could see them from the nearby colony buildings. The path was narrow, lined with dense trees, but it would lead them toward the hidden tunnels. Alex had a vague memory of the maps he had studied while working in the colony's underground systems. He hoped he remembered them correctly. With each step, the world around them seemed to get quieter, more distant. The usual sounds of the colony footsteps, voices, the hum of machines were replaced by the soft rustling of leaves underfoot and the faint chirping of distant creatures. It was strange to Alex. He had spent so many years living in the safety of the colony, surrounded by other people, that the quiet now felt unsettling. But Zarya was more attuned to the danger they were facing. She kept glancing nervously over, her shoulder, her sharp alien senses picking up every tiny sound. Her eyes darted to every rustling leaf, every shadow that moved, as if expecting someone to leap out at them. "You're sure this path will lead us to the tunnels?" Zarya asked, trying to keep the edge of fear from her voice. Alex nodded, trying to sound more confident than he felt. "I've worked on the colony systems before," he said. "There's an old entrance not far from here, if we can reach it. We'll be able to hide until we figure out our next move." Zarya hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Then let's hurry." They moved faster now, pushing through the underbrush, careful not to make too much noise. The forest seemed endless, and Alex was starting to wonder if he had made a mistake. But every step they took brought them closer to the tunnels. He could feel the weight of Zarya's trust on him. He couldn't let her down. As they neared the edge of the forest, the ground started to slope downward. Alex could feel the change in the air cooler damper. They had to be close. His eyes scanned the ground, looking for any sign of the hidden entrance. He remembered a rocky outcrop near the base of a cliff, an old landmark that would signal they were almost there. Finally, after what felt like hours of walking, they reached a small clearing. In the center of the clearing was a large, jagged rock formation. It looked out of place, as if it didn't belong there. Alex approached it cautiously, feeling around the edges of the rock. There, just as he remembered, was a small lever hidden beneath a pile of moss and vines. "Here," Alex said, turning to Zarya. "This is it." Zarya stepped forward, her eyes wide with surprise. "This is the entrance?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alex nodded and pulled the lever. Low grinding sound echoed from deep within the ground, and a section of the rock shifted, revealing a dark opening. Alex could feel a rush of relief flood through him. They were so close to safety. He stepped forward, holding the entrance open for Zarya. "After you," he said. Zarya hesitated for a moment before nodding and stepping into the darkness. Alex followed, pulling the heavy stone door back into place behind them. The entrance was narrow, and the walls of the tunnel were cold and damp. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, they could see that the path twisted and turned, disappearing into the depths of the earth. Alex glanced at Zarya, who seemed more at ease now that they were inside. But he knew they couldn't relax just yet. Garrick's forces could still be out there, and if they were caught before they reached the deeper levels of the tunnels, there would be no escape. "We're not safe yet," Alex muttered, his voice tense. "We have to keep moving." Zarya nodded, her face grim. She knew better than anyone that they couldn't stop now. But for the first time in days, she allowed herself to feel a small spark of hope. They had made it this far. Maybe, just maybe, they could escape the warlord's reach. The two of them moved deeper into the tunnels, their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. They didn't know what awaited them at the end of this dark path, but for now, it was the only chance they had. The tunnels stretched out before them, dark and narrow. The air inside felt cool and damp, and the walls were lined with rough, uneven stones. Alex kept his eyes on the path ahead, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease that had settled deep in his chest. He had no idea how far the tunnels went, or what dangers they might hold, but for now, they were their only chance. Zarya walked silently beside him, her steps careful and measured, as though she was trying to make as little noise as possible. Her face was pale, her eyes distant, lost in thought. Alex could feel the weight of her silence, and though she had spoken little, it was clear that she was struggling with more than just the physical exhaustion of the escape. He glanced over at her, noting the subtle tremble in her hands. The calm exterior she had shown when they first met had disappeared, replaced by a quiet anxiety. It was as though the pressure of the last few days had finally caught up with her. "Are you okay?" Alex asked quietly, his voice low, almost as though he were afraid of disturbing the stillness of the tunnels. Zarya didn't respond right away. She continued walking, her eyes focused on the ground beneath her feet, but her jaw tightened, as if she were trying to control her emotions. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," she said softly. "I thought I could handle this. I thought I could escape him. But now, I don't know if I can keep running." Alex slowed his pace, his mind racing. He had known from the start that Zarya's escape was not just about finding a safe place to hide. It was about more than running away from her past. But hearing her voice crack with uncertainty made it clear just how much she was carrying. The fear and stress of the last few weeks had worn her down, and it was starting to show. "You don't have to do this alone," Alex said, his voice steady. "I'm here. I'll help you however I can." Zarya looked up at him, her eyes full of gratitude, but also sadness. "You don't understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "My husband, Karaki's, ruthless. If he catches me again, he'll make me regret even thinking about escaping. I'm not just running from him, running from everything he's done to me, everything he's made me become." Alex felt his heart tighten at her words. He had heard the fear in her voice when she first spoke of Kurak. But now, hearing the depth of her pain, he understood just how much she had been through. It wasn't just about physical escape. It was about breaking free from the emotional and psychological chains that had held her captive for so long. "Zarya," Alex started, his voice soft, but she shook her head before he could continue. "You don't know what it's like," she whispered. "You don't know what it feels like to be trappy." She didn't say anything at first, but Alex could see the flicker of trust in her eyes, something she hadn't shown earlier. It was a small step, but it was enough. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "I'm scared that no matter what I do, I'll never be free. That Karak will always find me. And even if I do escape him, I'll never be the same again." I'll always be running, always looking over my shoulder, always wondering when it'll all catch up to me. Alex's heart ached for her. He wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that they'd find a way to end this nightmare, but he knew it wasn't that simple. He couldn't promise her an easy fix or a ending. But what he could offer was something more important: his support, his commitment to help her however he could. "Zarya," Alex said softly, his voice filled with sincerity, "you've already shown more strength than you think. Already come this far. You don't have to face any of this alone. I'm with you, every step of the way. Whatever happens, we'll figure it out together." Zarya took a deep breath, wiping her eyes quickly. She gave him a small, shaky smile, as though the weight of her words had lifted just a little. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Alex smiled back at her, trying to offer her some comfort in the darkness of the tunnel. They both knew that their journey wasn't over, that there were still many dangers ahead. But for the first time since meeting Zarya, Alex felt a sense of clarity. He had made a choice, and he wasn't going to back down now. He was going to help her find freedom, no matter what it took. The path ahead was still uncertain, and the warlord's forces were still out there, searching for them. But Alex knew one thing for sure: they weren't giving up. The silence of the tunnels was broken only by the soft echo of their footsteps. Alex and Zarya continued moving through the dark, cold passageways, each step carrying them deeper into the labyrinth beneath the colony. The deeper they went, the more it seemed like the world above had disappeared completely. There were no sounds of life, no voices, no engines, no footsteps. The cold stones surrounding them, and the ever-present weight of danger. Alex could feel the tension in Zarya's movements. She was more alert now than ever, her body stiff with anxiety. Could see it in the way she glanced over her shoulder, her eyes constantly searching the dark corners of the tunnel as if expecting someone to jump out at any moment. Even in the relative safety of the tunnels, Zarya couldn't shake the feeling that Kurak's forces were closing in. "How far are we from the exit?" Zarya asked, her voice low, but filled with worry. Alex glanced at the map in his hand, squinting at the faint markings. "We should be getting close. Maybe another hour, maybe less. Just keep moving." Zarya nodded, but her pace slowed a little. Her exhaustion from days of running was catching up to her. Alex noticed the way she swayed slightly with each step, her breath coming faster than it should have been. She had been through so much already, and yet the real danger was still ahead. Suddenly a distant sound reached their ears. It was faint at first, just the soft hum of engines, but as it grew louder, Alex's heart skipped a beat. Zarya froze. The sound was unmistakable. It was the sound of warships, and it was drawing closer. "They've found us," Zarya whispered, her voice filled with panic. Alex clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. "We need to move, now." But Zarya shook her head, her face pale with fear. "He's not going to stop. Kurak will burn this whole place to the ground if he has to. He's ruthless." Alex's mind raced. There was no way to outrun warships. They were faster and more powerful than anything he could imagine. The colony was already in danger, and now, with Zarya's escape plan at risk, the stakes were higher than ever. "We'll find the exit," Alex said firmly. "We just need to get out of here before they catch up." They quickened their pace, moving through the tunnels as fast as they could. The sounds of the engines grew louder and louder, until Alex was sure they were just above them. Every footstep felt heavier. Every turn in the tunnel felt more like a dead end. They had to get out, but the path ahead was unclear as they rounded a sharp corner. Alex caught a glimpse of something in the distance light. It was faint, but it was there. It was the sign they were looking for. The exit. "That's it," Alex said, a surge of hope rising in his chest. "We're almost there." But just as they began to move toward the light, the ground beneath them shook. The tunnel rumbled as if the very walls themselves were being torn apart. Alex's heart stopped. The warlord's forces weren't just outside, they were already here. "Move," Alex shouted, grabbing Zarya's arm and pulling her toward the light. But the shaking intensified, and the tunnel ahead of them seemed to collapse. Dust and rocks fell from the ceiling as the ground cracked open beneath their feet. Alex and Zarya stumbled, barely managing to keep their balance. The shaking continued, and Alex realized with a chill that the warlord's forces weren't just looking for them, they were preparing to destroy everything in their path. Karak ships must have already started their assault. We have to go, Alex shouted again, dragging Zarya along as the tunnel started to collapse behind them. They pushed forward, each step becoming harder as the tunnel buckled and groaned under the pressure of the attack. The light ahead grew brighter, and Alex thought for a moment that they might make it. But then a loud explosion echoed through the tunnel. The force of it sent them both flying to the ground. Alex landed hard on his side, pain shooting through his ribs. He groaned but forced himself to his feet, reaching for Zarya. She was lying on the ground a few feet away, her face pale but conscious. "Zarya," Alex called, rushing to her side. He helped her up, his heart pounding. "We have to keep going." Zarya looked at him, fear in her eyes. "It's too late," she whispered. "They've already found us. We won't make it." "No," Alex said, his voice firm. "We're getting out of here, together." He pulled her up and ran, ignoring the pain in his side as they moved through the tunnel. Ow. The walls were starting to crack and the ceiling was falling in places. But the light at the end of the tunnel was still there, still calling to them. They had to reach it. They had no choice. With one last push, Alex and Zarya reached the exit. It wasn't much, just a narrow passage that led into the open air. But it was enough. They emerged from the tunnel, gasping for breath as the full scale of the chaos above hit them. The sky was dark, filled with the shadows of Karak's warships. Explosions rang out in the distance, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. Alex could see the massive ships in the sky, their engines glowing with power. They were here, but they were alive. For now, that was enough. Alex turned to Zarya, his face grim. "We have to keep moving. They won't stop until they find us." Zarya nodded, her face determined despite the fear that still held her. She had escaped. The warlords grasped once, but it was clear that the fight wasn't over. The warlord would come for her again. But as long as they had each other, Alex knew they had a chance. He wouldn't give up, not when Zarya needed him the most. Together, they ran, their footsteps echoing in the night. As the sound of war raged around them, the sounds of explosions grew louder as Alex and Zarya ran through the night, their hearts pounding in unison with the thundering blasts echoing in the distance. The colony was under attack. Karak's warships filled the sky, their massive forms blocking out the stars as they unleashed their fury on the land below. The warlords' forces were relentless. It seemed like nothing could stand in their way. Alex's thoughts raced as he looked around, trying to make sense of their situation. They had managed to escape the tunnels, but the warships were still closing in. Zarya was breathing heavily beside him, but she was determined, her gaze set forward with a focus Alex had never seen before. She was no longer the woman filled with fear and uncertainty. She was a fighter now, ready to do whatever it took to survive. "Where are we going?" Zarya asked, her voice filled with urgency. "We can't just keep running forever. We need a plan." Alex looked ahead, his mind working quickly. He knew they couldn't outrun the warships. Karak's forces were too powerful, too fast. They needed to find a way to stop them, or at least slow them down long enough to escape. "There's a nearby command center," Alex said, pointing toward the hills in the distance. "It's a military outpost. We might be able to get inside and find something to fight back with." Zarya hesitated, her eyes scanning the horizon. She could see the lights of the warships flashing in the distance, their engines glowing like ominous red eyes. The thought of running into another battle, one they might not survive, made her stomach twist. But she knew they had no choice. If they didn't fight back, they would be caught. "Let's go," Zarya said, her voice steady. "But we have to hurry. We don't have much time." They moved quickly, pushing through the dense forest, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick undergrowth. Every so often, the ground shook as another explosion rocked the area. The air smelled of smoke and burning metal, and Alex could feel the heat of the fires in the distance as they reached the outskirts of the command center. Alex motioned for Zarya to stay low. They crouched behind a row of trees, peering out at the small military installation ahead. The command center was a fortified building, surrounded by high walls and guarded by several soldiers. It looked well protected, but Alex knew that it might be their only chance. "We need to get inside," Alex whispered. "If we can reach the control room, we might be able to send a distress signal or trigger the defenses." Zarya nodded, her eyes sharp with determination. "Let's do it."
All the two
of them crept through the shadows, careful not to alert the guards. Alex's heart raced as they drew closer to the building. He could hear voices ahead, the soldiers speaking in low tones. Unaware that their entire world was about to be turned upside down, they reached the outer wall, and Alex quickly found a small gap in the security system. He had worked with military tech before, and he knew how to hack into basic systems. With a few quick moves, he bypassed the security lock, and the gate creaked open. "Quick," Alex said as he motioned for Zarya to follow him. "We're in." Slipped inside, moving swiftly through the shadows. Alex had never felt this exposed, but he pushed the fear aside. He had no choice but to trust his instincts. As they reached the central building, Alex stopped. The heavy doors were locked, but there was a keypad next to them. He pulled out his tool, a small device he used for hacking, and began working on the lock. "What are we going to do once we're inside?" Zarya asked, her voice tense. We need to find the control room," Alex replied, his fingers flying over the keypad. "Once we have access, we can call for reinforcements or disable the warship's targeting systems. We just need to buy some time." The door clicked open, and Alex pushed it cautiously. The interior was dimly lit, and the air smelled of stale metal. They moved quickly through the hallways, passing rows of locked doors and quiet offices. The only sound was the soft hum of the building's power systems. When they reached the control room, Alex felt a surge of hope. The door was unlocked, and he stepped inside, his eyes scanning the monitors and consoles. He could see that the room was filled with various systems communications, surveillance, and defensive measures. "We need to disable the warships," Alex said, sitting at one of the consoles and quickly getting to work. "We don't have long before they find us here." Zarya stood at the door, her eyes darting around as she kept watch. She knew that once they activated the controls, they would be exposed. But there was no going back now. Karak's forces were too close, and they needed to act fast. As Alex worked, he could feel the pressure mounting. He was in the zone now, his hands moving quickly across the console, his mind focused entirely on the task at hand. He had to stop the warships. He had to buy them time. "Almost there," Alex muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. "I just need a few more seconds." Suddenly, the door to the control room burst open. Alex barely had time to react before a group of soldiers entered, weapons drawn. They had found them, hands in the air. One of the soldiers shouted, his voice sharp. "You're under arrest for trespassing?" Alex froze, his heart racing. He had been so close. But now, they were trapped. Zarya's eyes went wide with panic, but Alex grabbed her arm, his grip firm. He wasn't going down without a fight. "Let's make this count," Alex whispered to her, a determined look in his eyes. "We're not giving up now." Just as the soldiers moved toward them, Alex pushed a button on the console. A loud alarm sounded, and the lights in the room flickered. A defensive shield activated around the building, blocking the soldiers' path. Alex turned to Zarya, his voice low but urgent. "We have to go now." Together, they dashed for the back exit, knowing that they had just made their final stand.
Whatever
happened next, they had made their move. They had given everything for the chance at survival, but even as they ran, Alex knew that this was only the beginning of a much bigger fight. The sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway behind them. Alex and Zarya didn't dare look back as they sprinted through the building, the pressure mounting with every step. The alarm still blared, the shrill sound cutting through the air like a warning that no one would ignore.
Oh.
But they didn't have time to worry about the soldiers who were surely closing in. They had to escape. "Keep going," Lex shouted, his voice full of urgency. Zaire was right behind him, her pace steady, despite the fear that still gripped her. The defensive shield had bought them a few precious seconds, but the soldiers wouldn't be down for long. The door to the back exit was only a few steps away, but every corner they turned felt like another obstacle. "We're almost there," Alex urged, his heart pounding. The back door loomed in front of them, and Alex could see the faint light of the outside world shining through the cracks. The sight of it filled him with hope, but there was no time to enjoy it. The soldiers were getting closer. They had no idea what was waiting for them once they got outside. Zarya grabbed his arm, her face full of fear, but also determination. "Alex, what if they catch us? What do we do then?" Alex didn't have an answer. He didn't know what to do if they were caught, but he wasn't about to let that happen. Not now. Not after everything they had been through. They had come too far to turn back. "We won't get caught," Alex said, his voice steady. "We'll make it out." With one final push, they reached the door. Alex didn't hesitate, he threw it open, and they stepped into the night air, their eyes squinting against the sudden light. The colony was in chaos. Warships hovered above, their massive forms casting dark shadows on the ground below. Explosions shook the earth, and the sky was filled with the smoke of battle. But for the first time in what felt like forever, Alex and Zarya had a moment of peace. They stood there, staring at the open world in front of them. The warlords' forces were still attacking, but they were no longer trapped inside the walls of the command center. For the first time in days, Zarya could breathe without fear of being hunted down. "Now what?" Zarya asked, still catching her breath. Alex glanced around, his eyes scanning the area. They were far from safe, but they were free, and that, for now, was enough. "We need to find a safe place," Alex said. "We can't stay here with the warships. So close. We need to get away from them." Zarya nodded, understanding the urgency. But as they turned to move, a loud voice called out to them from behind. "Stop right there," a soldier shouted, his weapon raised. Alex's heart raced as he looked over his shoulder. The soldier was only a few yards away, and there was no way they could outrun him with the warships overhead. But Zarya didn't hesitate. Without a word, she ran toward the soldier, her body moving with a fluid grace. Alex's eyes widened in surprise as she knocked the soldier's weapon from his hands. With a swift move, he stumbled back in shock, but before he could react, Zarya had already taken him down with a move that Alex could only describe as precise and powerful. She stood over him, breathing heavily but unfazed. Alex stared in disbelief for a moment. Before shaking his head, he had no idea where she had learned to fight like that, but in that moment, he realized just how much she had changed since he had first met her. "That was..." Alex started, but Zarya cut him off, her eyes scanning the area once more. "We don't have time for this," she said. "Let's go." Alex nodded, still trying to catch up with the fact that the woman he had been helping all this time was more capable than he had given her credit for. Together, they continued to move, staying low as they crossed the open ground toward the nearby hills. As they ran, the sounds of battle continued to fill the air. The warlords' forces were relentless, but Alex could feel the weight of their victory growing with every step. They had survived the escape from the command center, and now they were closer to finding a safe place. "Where are we going?" Zarya asked, her voice softer now. Though the tension was still clear in her eyes, Alex didn't have a solid plan, but he knew they couldn't stay here for long. The warships would eventually be called back, but for now, they had the advantage. "Know a place," Alex said, his voice more confident. "It's a small shelter just outside the colony. It's not much, but it'll give us time to regroup." Zarya gave him a small nod, and they pressed forward, each step bringing them further away from the danger that had nearly consumed them as they neared the shelter. Alex could see the faint outline of the structure ahead. The small building was hidden in the woods, far enough from the colony that it wouldn't be easily discovered. It wasn't much, but it was safe. They reached the door, and Alex pushed it open, ushering Zarya inside. The room was dimly lit, but it was dry and quiet. A welcome change from the chaos outside. Zarya collapsed onto the floor, her chest heaving with exhaustion. Alex sat beside her, his own breath coming in ragged gasps. For the first time in what felt like forever, they were safe. For now, they were free from the warlord's grasp. The battle was far from over, but in this moment, they had won. Sar looked at Alex, her eyes softening. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice filled with emotion. Alex shook his head, a tired but content smile on his face. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "I'm just glad we made it out. Together." They sat there in the silence of the shelter, knowing that the war wasn't over yet, but for now, they had survived. And in that moment, it was enough.